What makes a marketing team world-class today?
There are many, many different facets to it. It's a team that chases the customer, not the campaigns.
We're joined by Rachel Exton, Vice President of Global Brand at Pearson, where she's leading a bold transformation of this 180-year-old company.
The best campaigns are when marketeers can hold a mirror up to their customers and they're like, how the hell did you know that about me? And that only comes if you put the customer before the campaign.
From building brands in FMCG at Unilever and Reckitt to driving global growth and innovation at Dyson. How are you using AI?
Honestly, don't know how I existed before ChatGPT. It helps me entertain the kids. We were on holiday, they were bored. I'm like, let's do a quiz.
Launched award-winning initiatives and is passionate about developing talent and embedding brand thinking into every corner of a business.
I don't think AI is going to replace marketing, but marketeers that use AI well will replace marketeers that don't.
Rachel, amazing to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We promise you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. You've led massive global teams, marketing teams. So from your experience, what makes a marketing team world-class today? And how do you embed performance and learning cultures simultaneously?
Oh, okay, that is a big question to start with. So what makes a great marketing team? Well, I think there are many, many different facets to it. But for me, I think the standout ones are, it's a team that chases the customer, not the campaigns. I love doing flashy campaigns. Who doesn't? We're all in marketing. But for me, the root of everything has to be that deep understanding of the customer and that true passion for the customer, who they are, and that willingness to be curious and dig deep and keep on digging until you really uncover some truths. Because I think that the best campaigns are when marketeers can hold a mirror up to their customers and they're like, how the hell did you know that about me? And that only comes if you put the customer before the campaign. So I think that would be number one. I think number two, which is closely linked, is just be relentlessly curious. Like always asking why. Things are always moving on. They're always changing. So I think that's really important. Know your data. Data is really important, and it's something I know the younger me was really scared of, but actually it's quite simple and it's extremely powerful. The way in which you can do those big sexy campaigns is by getting the data to prove that the money you're investing is paying back. So get comfortable with your data. Don't go down a rabbit hole with it. You know, you've got to think about what are the 4 or 5 killer KPIs that are going to really work with my stakeholders, and you religiously report on them. I think that would be key.
You're already, by the way, giving us so much juice here.
I mean, like, where do we go?
It's incredible, actually. Maybe I'll take it. I'll take it on this because you've had such an amazing career with a wide variety of different industries. And you've seen marketing evolve through those times. And I wonder if maybe contrast perhaps the beginnings of your career to where you see some of the fundamental pillars of marketing today. What's changed? You maybe can even say what's maybe stayed the same, as often is said. But
yeah,
how's it evolved?
Well, I think when I first started, I'm going to show you my age now, but when I first started at Unilever back in, I think it was like 2000, you know, all of us grads wanted to do a TV campaign.
So you're young, frankly.
Yeah, spring chicken. But that's what you were like, oh, I can't wait to do my first TV campaign. Like it was so exciting, really glamorous. That's what you all wanted to work on. I remember being so proud as well when I did my first Lipton iced tea campaign. Like my mum, my dad, my gran, they all sat down and we watched it together. It was brilliant. I loved it. But who talks about TV anymore? You know, it's all about influencers, for example, a completely different type of marketing. And now I think the biggest thing for me is how we're shifting from Google search to AI search. And actually what you have to do as a brand to kind of turn up in ChatGPT is actually extremely different to what you have to do to turn up in Google. So there's loads of little things in between, but they're the 3 big standout ones for me. And I'm learning massively at the moment, which I love. I love still learning new stuff, even though it can be a bit scary and it's almost completely...
Well, you're obviously in the right company to learn.
That's very true.
I mean, clearly.
I just to step back one thing about the customer centricity. So just a couple of references. So in Amazon, they have that empty chair, don't they? What would the customer think? I remember my first decade was at Mars, where when the Mars family would come round at the quality panels, people would eat the dog food. That was the genesis of the term dog fooding. And it's again like,
I'm not going to do that.
But
you get to read books or something.
I'd drink the champagne.
Go sit in the library, go to a book launch.
Let's drink our own champagne. I'll do that one. That's fine. I'll sign up for that.
I think that works.
Mark, did you do the dog fooding?
I didn't, but honestly, when the Mars family came round, you couldn't keep people away from the stuff. Anyway, the point being, have you ever come across, and this is maybe tips for people listening, any symbolic acts or things that really reinforce that customer orientation?
Oh, well, I think one of the things which I first discovered at Dyson, which I really loved, was like an ethnographic study. So when I was in Dyson, I was responsible for the APAC region, looking at the innovation in the campaigns. And it was fascinating because I've never grown up in Asia. I've never lived there. I've never worked there. And this study was fascinating because we completely immersed ourselves in kind of families, and you kind of just realized the differences, which made their cleaning rituals just so different. And it's not something I think, as a Westerner, I could have got without that complete kind of immersion. Nice. I absolutely loved it. And I'd recommend to, anybody to kind of get stuck into that type of study.
Yeah, we walked with people on dog walks, and I did some in Tokyo for the Caesar brand, and absolutely illuminating.
Pearson has recently been through some significant brand changes. Just rebranded, in fact, perhaps just as the cusp of you were coming into that role, maybe? Was that...
The week I arrived, we launched the new brand. Yes.
Jeez, so baptism of fire.
Completely.
So give us a little bit of a thought around it.
Pearson as itself is going through a big transformation at the moment, but I think every single company is. This isn't just something which is happening for Pearson. I think every company is having to pivot and change to survive in the world that we're operating in at the moment. But Pearson's kind of ambitions are something I'm really passionate about. So we're in the process of moving from a formal education provider. So if we went out and stopped people in the street at the moment and said Pearson, most people wouldn't have heard of it. I hadn't until when I got the phone call. And if they had heard of it, they would say, textbook company, expensive. That's probably what they would say. And we are on a mission to change that. And we want to move from being a formal education company to a company that is known for formal education, but also vocational training and enterprise upskilling. And I think it's just hugely important, not just for the company growth, but for society that we actually achieve. I don't think, the world has ever needed learning as much as it does today. And as much as I love formal education, and I think there's a group of society who thrive in formal education, it's not for everybody. If I'm honest, I struggled in formal education. I'm dyslexic. I'm much more practical in terms of my learning. And I would have loved to have options like BTEC, NVQs, apprenticeships, but they just weren't around. And I think it's wonderful now that the younger generation have options available to them. And if we get it right, it can really impact some really big things. So I don't know if you've heard of NEET. It's not in education, not employed, and not in training. And I don't know if you know the percentage of young population in the UK that fall into that category at the moment.
Oh, God.
Any guesses?
Only to say that it's increasing?
It's definitely increasing.
40%?
It's actually it's 13%, but it's growing at around 1.2% a year. That's in the UK. It's different everywhere else. But vocational can help that. Absolutely. It can bring people who have dropped out for whatever reason back in and inspire them. And then when it comes to the enterprise kind of reskilling, we've just talked about AI. This whole notion that 1 degree will last you a lifetime. It's just over. I'm sorry, it's completely over. For us, I've still got hopefully 20 years left. I'm going to have to reskill more in those 20 years than I have in the previous 20 years. And young kids who are just entering the workforce, they're going to have to do it time and time again. And to get them used to that, first of all, we have to teach them to learn to learn. You don't just learn once, but we also have to equip companies like Mars, like HSBC, because their HR team are going to have to work harder than ever before to really develop the talent, to allow them to retrain, to allow them to help their companies to grow. So it's fascinating stuff. And it's great as a marketeer to be able to use your trade to actually make a big impact. And that's something I'm really passionate about.
It's very cool. So
today's program is brought to you by two fantastic organizations. First up is Studio Space, a leading on-demand marketing agency platform. Studio Space gives marketers complete control over their projects, from matching the right agency to your brief, to managing contracts and invoicing, and even tracking all of your spend data all in the one place. They take care of everything and it's totally hassle-free. They even guarantee the work. So check out Studio Space today. Our second sponsor is the Marketing Skills Trust, a charity with a mission to make marketing a better place for everyone. They provide grants to help create a more equitable industry and support initiatives that really do drive diversity, inclusion, and create opportunity. The trust has been instrumental in leveling up the marketing skills across the board. And do take a look at their website for more information. Now, let's get on with the show.
On the face of it, it's a very purpose-led company. And, we all know about Unilever and so on. And in some cases, the purpose bit is being unwound. But it seems to be like fundamental to the company. How is the purpose lived and breathed? Does it feel like that from the inside?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody who work at Pearson is there because, they really believe in the power of education and learning. Our purpose is to help people realize the life that they imagine. Ooh. And how wonderful is that? And it is absolutely something that drives us. But we are also a FTSE 100 company. We have to make sure that we are delivering growth and revenue and profit, that allows us to do more to help people realize the life they imagine. So it does really feel very purposeful and a really lovely place to work.
Yeah, I can imagine. So as VP of Global Brand in itself partly lives in the mind of the customer, and it's also partly in the experience that they have with the various touch points at every moment in time when they interact with your brand. So how much emphasis and impetus are you putting on experience when it comes to brand versus perception?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think you're right in terms of brand lives everywhere. I think the one you miss from that, though, is internal hearts and minds. I think that's where you've got to start, and I'm finding with brand, because absolutely the customer is king. But when you are not in a kind of brand first organization, you've got to get that passion internally and that understanding for brand. Because for me, brand is a team sport. It's not something that's done by the marketing department. Every conversation a salesperson has impacts our brand. Every interaction somebody from customer service has impacts our brand.
Exactly.
Every time you log into a product, when all of those students opened up their result letter today and saw Pearson EdXL, that impacts our brands. So for me, coming into this role, it's starting with winning internal hearts and minds and getting them to understand the power of the brand, because Pearson isn't a brand company. If anything, I started off my career lucky growing up in Unilever, because everybody got brand. Yeah. You could speak to the CFO and say, I want to invest this in a campaign. And they'd probably be like, yeah, that doesn't happen at Pearson. You've got to really begin to kind of educate about brand. So that is kind of the starting point. What I'm also learning is when I got offered the role, I was like, oh my God, that's my dream role. I remember our group CMO, Ginny, said to me, Rachel, do you want to think about it? I'm like, no. I didn't play it. I'm in. I didn't play it cool at all. I really should have. I was like, I'm in.
101 of negotiation skills.
Yeah, no, exactly. I kind of, I maybe you can help me with that after this. But I'm like, I'm in. And I was dreaming of launching the new brand. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z campaign. I want to do this to the website. And actually what I've realized is before you can do all that, you've got to build the foundations. So at the moment, we have thousands of marketing suppliers. How can I build a consistent brand? I need to consolidate. That's not the sexy side of brand you expect to work on a vendor consolidation program, but it's so important. How have we got the right guidelines in place so teams all around the world can execute consistently? Not that sexy, but so important, or otherwise it's all going to fall apart.
Pearson evolved through a series of acquisition as well, and that also maybe creates that additional layer of need for consolidation?
Absolutely. So another key foundational project I'm working on is brand architecture, which I'm rebranding as business architecture.
Right.
I can do it because I work in brand. But it's not, I think calling it brand architecture makes people think it's a marketing job, and it's not. What I call business architecture is making it easy for our customers to shop with us. We call it brand soup. I've got a lovely slide I could show you with all of the sub-brands in Pearson. There are hundreds and hundreds. How are you going to build a brand? So this one is making my head ache. I'm not going to lie. It's like a massive jigsaw puzzle and a massive kind of influencing kind of job in speaking to stakeholders. We all know how attached and how emotional naming is.
Yes.
I can remember when I was at Dyson, James Dyson used to be involved in all the naming discussions. We used to get the thesaurus out, everything. People get so passionate about it, and I get it, and I love it.
What an incredible name drop, by the way.
My best friend.
Incredible.
I tell you, I know him. I only worked with him for 12 years.
Amazing.
Realise the ambitions they'd imagined. Let's just turn that lens back on you. So you grew up, you said offline from a council estate in Gloucestershire. What did you imagine for yourself, and how have you managed to realise your ambitions?
Well, I think if you asked my mum and dad when I was 13, I think they probably thought I would have ended up in prison. I by far was not that bad.
What were you up to?
I wasn't that bad. I just had a very, I love my older sister, but goodness, she played it safe by the rules. I, on the other hand, had boyfriends. I was out drinking. I was smoking. They told me, no, you couldn't go to that party. So I just jump out of my window and go anyway. But they also instilled, my parents are fab, and they instilled some really wonderful values in me. And despite partying hard, I also did my homework. I always did my homework. And one of the best things I think I did was I left school after my GCSEs. I did okay in my GCSEs, but as I said earlier, I just struggled a bit with academia, and I went to the local college. I did do A-levels because I didn't have a choice to do T-levels or anything like that then. But just the freedom, I basically had a choice, because at school you have to go, you have to turn up, you have to wear a uniform. And at college they want to turn up if you want. It's up to you. And I was actually, do you know what? I do really want to do this. I do really want to do this. I have got quite a competitive streak in me as well, which I think helps. But I was doing subjects I loved. I did business studies. I didn't want to do economics. I wanted to do business studies. I did geography, and I did communication studies, which everybody always laughs at when I tell them. It's like, oh, you're learning how to talk. And I'm like, no. It was a fascinating subject, and it was all about one-on-one group maths, quite psychology-driven. But I absolutely loved it. And then I went off to university. So I went to Bournemouth. I have to say at the time, this was interesting. It's a great uni, but back then, it was a little frowned upon because it was an old polytechnic. You see, it wasn't a red brick.
But I mean, for comms and for advertising and for creativity, oh my God. Yeah.
I also did a placement year, which is very common now, but wasn't standard back in the day. And for me, that was so important. I wanted to get the placement year. As well as your dissertation and your exams, my degree was on presentation skills, but also on like kind of projects as well. So it was kind of early for its
Sounds
time.
more useful than
Exactly. I think, to be honest with you, I would agree. I mean, what employer wants you to write a dissertation, but they quite like you to do a presentation or a business case. Cool. So, and I had the most fantastic time there. You know, I met some of my best friends. You know, I'm still in touch with the girls today, which is wonderful. And I just really enjoyed business. I really, really enjoyed it. I did a placement year at British Airways. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into HR or marketing. I just got the marketing job first. That's why I did it at British Airways. But I realised that the reason I wanted to go into HR is I love people, but actually I can get that in marketing.
Two for one.
Human psychology as well.
Absolutely.
You know, the heart of marketing.
Absolutely. And I loved it. It was great. And then came back, specialised in marketing. And then I'd like to say it was a really easy road into Unilever, but it wasn't at all. I kind of was a typical kind of, 21-year-old thinking, shit, I've got to pay back all these loans. I need to get a job. What do I do? And did the odd milk round. I went and saw a few companies, and I went along to the Unilever presentation, and I really liked it. You know, you just kind of really feel something in your tummy, really. Really loved it. Applied, completely bombed the interview, and they said no. And I was really disappointed, but my head wasn't in the right space. I was finalising my dissertation and stuff. And I thought, what do I do now? And I went to a few other companies, but none of them made me feel like Unilever did. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go again. And I think that would be my big advice to kind of people is don't be afraid to give it a second shot if you really believe in it. I did go off traveling, which was really nice, but I got a phone call when I was on the Whitsundays in Australia saying, you've got a kind of, that Unilever want to kind of invite you kind of like to the second round. Yeah. So, I came back and I think really the rest is history. Unilever, I will always be so grateful for my time at Unilever. It's like a mini MBA, or not just a mini MBA, it is an MBA in marketing. Exactly. Yeah, and what they invest in you and the experiences you get, I still dust off like my folders now, like how many years on.
I bet.
And so, I'm very grateful. They kind of made me the marketeer I am today.
But despite perhaps the thought about the persistence point around not getting in the first time, there'll be moments in your career where things haven't necessarily gone to plan. And so maybe can you give us a bit of insight into some of those moments? Because we often learn the most when things don't go the way we want them.
Yeah, no, I've got a lot. But the one which instantly kind of springs to mind is my move from FMCG into technology, so into Dyson. And at the time I was at Reskilling and Pisa, and a lot of my colleagues said, Rachel, you're committing career suicide. Not only are you leaving FMCG, but you're going B2B. Like, what are you doing?
Did they know you were going to hang out with James Dyson at the time? I'm out of career
How short-sighted they all were.
Like, seriously.
But I was really excited because what I'd found, and although I'm so grateful for my FMCG career and I would do it again in a heartbeat, what I found with working in FMCG is when you start on a brand, they're all so well established, you almost get handed like a metaphoric suitcase of this is how you do it. And you get to shape it around the edges. But that's what you get. Whereas in Dyson, what they were asking me to do was come in and build the suitcase. They had no idea how to do it. And for me, goodness, what an opportunity to start.
What a brief.
Exactly. It really was. But I got it completely wrong on the first go, Rich. I got it completely wrong. And what did I learn? I think I came in, and it was a really big move and I wanted to make my mark. My first thing is I didn't listen probably enough. And it sounds really foolish to say it because of course you listen when you go in. But I think my big thing here was I listened, but I was kind of superficially listening. And it kind of really taught me to really kind of really listen. And there is a difference. And I found it when I clicked into really listening. I thought I was listening, but I didn't. Because it is different. There are similarities to FMCG, but it is different. Ultimately, you're still marketing to humans. Yep. But instead of the housewife at home with 2 kids or the mum at home with 2 kids, I was speaking to that same person, but with their work hat on. So, she was a facilities manager, for example. So all of the saying get to know your customer, everything works. But I just came at it with a very FMCG mindset, and we did this big kind of campaign on LinkedIn. on paper it all made sense, and in theory it all made sense, but it just didn't work and didn't deliver at all. And actually what I learned, like some of the more what you would call old school or unsexy methods of direct marketing, telesales, I mean, oh my God, would you do that in FMCG? That was like, the dirt on the bottom of your shoe. Worked brilliantly.
Yeah.
So my big lessons there were really, really listen. And, be open-minded and try kind of new channels as well, because you do get, do get some really pleasant surprises.
So Marketing Academy, we'll come back to the Marketing Academy you think I was going to ask about, but I was actually going to ask about the Marketing Academy you created at Dyson. So you obviously were involved in, you talked about the suitcase. Was that what you mean? Is that what the Academy became, the way to do marketing in Dyson?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I've always, as I said, was very grateful for what happened and my experience really at Unilever. And I just have always been quite passionate about developing myself and developing other people. And all of the other companies I worked in just didn't have that experience. I was quite heavily involved in the grad schemes because I've just always kind of wanted to kind of give back because, it was so great when I was in that position when people were willing to kind of engage and help you. But no other company had that. And I really wanted to create it. And we were in a situation in Dyson where, Dyson's very unique. We don't use agencies. Everything's done in-house. There's a real philosophy. Like James famously says that he doesn't do marketing. He does. He just likes to be controversial. But it's really important that when you work for an owner, you have to, the brand is them, and he's a human. And when you do a TV ad or you've got an influencer, it's his name, and you want to speak in his voice. And he's an engineer, and I learned so much from him in terms of if you ever look at one of the Dyson vacuum cleaner boxes, on the side there's what we would call our hedgehog, which became quite famous, which is a picture of the machine and very intricate detail of all of the technology and engineering which is inside it. And I'm like, but James, people don't want to know that. People who are buying it, like me, when I buy a vacuum, I don't care. I just want it to pick up the dirt. And he was like, but I care because it's the engineering inside the machine. And by seeing it, even if they don't understand it, it helps them understand it's jam-packed with technology. So there was quite a unique way of doing marketing in a tone of voice because it was James and we all needed to be engineers and think like engineers, even though we didn't have an engineering career. So it was those two things combined, which meant that we set up the Marketing Academy. And I loved it. And we did it. We had a fantastic creative director, Jim Turner. He ran a session on on what made Dyson Dyson. We had engineers come in, I ran sessions, we got some of our agencies in. It was just really, really rewarding, both to see the results, but also just to get the feedback, because as well as helping people develop, it makes people feel valued, it connects people, it's really, really powerful.
I love that notion. And as you say, and it's almost hand in glove with what you're doing today around the upskilling piece in a broader context.
Absolutely.
But coming back to what you described around James and being an embodiment of perhaps some of his personality that kind of gets into the comms. And in fact, joining the dot to what you said earlier about some of the key trends you're seeing, and one particularly around having the role of influencers being more dominant. I mean, is that sort of creator-led economy as we describe it something that's sort of front of your mind today when you're looking at brand in the context of a learning company?
It's part of it, but can only be part of it. I don't think you build a brand with kind of creators or influencers. They've got to be able to talk about something on your behalf, and so they don't create the brand. I think that comes from, internally and, all of the consumer research that we've done. They're great vehicles to then help people understand it.
Got it.
But I wouldn't say they create it. I think it's ours.
Yes.
But they are a great vehicle to help, for sure.
And I guess as part of that, though, perhaps the more instrumental stakeholder is sort of employee advocacy. Because as you described, it's the people that intersect with the customers that then create the perceptions and create the experience.
Absolutely. You've just got to start internally, I think, because if your people don't believe in it, if they can't talk about it, then I don't know what hope we have externally. But yeah, and also, with a company like Pearson, that's an army of 10,000 people out talking about your brand at every dinner, at every family gathering, at the school gate. It's amazing how it can ripple out.
I was back in my heyday. I heard the sort of this.
Richie, you're in your prime now.
Perhaps. There we are.
Careful,
still coming. Still working on that. But AMV BBDO always had this mantra that if you can distill a brand campaign or distill a campaign and then insight into one word, then you potentially have something which is really powerful. And the embodiment of that is the Sainsbury's Try campaign, where try something new, etc. But my colleague here, he created the Fixer campaign, which was the Harvey Keitel
part of the team. But anyway,
there you go.
I'm liking this.
Take all the credit. It's fine.
Take it, Mark.
It's all good. It's all good. But I think part of the magic that you've talked to around this was the notion that the teams across the organization were very galvanized by the terminology that was used, and everyone kind of embodied that sort of fixer mentality to go out and actually try and do good as a consequence of marketing.
Extreme examples of customer orientation. Like an employee taking their TV to somebody who'd had to the house of somebody who'd had their TV stolen, so that they could, like extreme stuff, because people got it. And when asked, they would say, well, like this is what these 10-foot high posters say on the wall. WWWWD. What would Winston Wolfe do? And they would say, like, it was obvious that's what Winston Wolfe would do if faced with that. So I mean, Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? So in terms of that capturing of that insight, which galvanized the entire organization, that's the power of what marketers have in their hands. It really is a special thing.
Yeah,
basically.
and I think sometimes it's really underrated. Often people think, marketing just does the colouring in or gets a pretty pen or a bag, and we can do all of those things. But actually, we're strategic growth drivers. I think marketing and building a brand is what makes a company grow and what makes a company resilient, because with a brand comes trust.
Does your board see it that way?
Kind of yes and no, if that makes sense. Yes and no. I think we've got everybody is really supportive, but we are still educating on the power of the brand. Because we just haven't done it before. And I think there's a real kind of willingness and eagerness, but what we have to do is inspire. I think we're absolutely speaking to people's hearts, but very quickly, my job is to come up with some wins to speak to the heads as well, so we can get the budget to gain the momentum that we need. So that's kind of my big challenge at the moment, is how can I get that evidence quickly to convince people to kind of invest more. So
true. So true.
So now I'll boomerang back to the Marketing Academy as the world knows it, not just the one at Dyson. So you're on the fellowship here this year with Sherilyn and Ben Carter on recently, and we've also had Phoebe Barter as well. So it's a good crew.
Great.
So say a little bit about what it is and what you're learning. How are you learning through this process?
Yeah. Well, it's an incredible experience, and I actually found out about it from a great friend. I'm very grateful. Cheryl Calverley actually was on the program as well, and
she was on our
recommended
podcast
it to
too.
me.
Yeah,
Probably, you get all the best ones, all the best ones. And I remember just her. I think I met her for a drink after she had kind of completed one of the courses, and she was just so enthused and so passionate about it all. And she's like, Rach, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. So she convinced me to do it, and it's fantastic for a number of reasons. Firstly, as you said, it's an amazing group of people, and just the network alone is just incredible. I had a problem at work the other day, and I just popped it into the WhatsApp group, and you've got some of the greatest minds in marketing kind of there in an instant, willing to help, willing to cheerlead, willing to kind of support you, which is, a really amazing feeling, really, to have that support network. So I'm very grateful for that. But I think what I've also really loved as well is it's really opened my eyes to how CEOs and board members think of marketing. By enabling you to put yourself in their shoes, it means that I can influence myself differently. I can put together my stories differently to allow me to be more effective. So yeah, I think that's what's really helped me, and some of the insights and just some of the challenges that they're dealing with. I haven't always seen it in my seat, and what the Marketing Academy's done is kind of put me in their seat, and so it's allowed me to kind of understand and, as I say, structure things and just operate a little bit differently to kind of really kind of make sure I'm hitting the mark, so it helps me achieve my goals and my objectives.
Play a bigger game.
Exactly. Well put.
Talking about development and upskilling and reskilling, clearly one of the biggest trends of the day is the role of AI. And I'm sure you'll have a perspective on how that impacts and influences the marketing function specifically. But even beyond that, I mean, how are you using AI in your personal life, your work life, as a means to keep current or to kind of do things in a different way?
Yeah. I honestly don't know how I existed before ChatGTP. Like,
so true. Oh my God.
It tells me what to cook for dinner, everything. It helps me entertain the kids. We were on holiday. They were bored. I'm like, let's do a quiz. Ask ChatGTP. When we went on holiday, I asked it, can you give me a kid-friendly itinerary for Istanbul? Boom, with Google, it would help me, and I'd have to pull it all together, and it would take you a whole evening. 3 seconds, it was done. And I sent it to my work colleague, actually, Anne Friend, who lives in Istanbul. I said, what do you think? She was like, spot on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
It's so true.
It's really amazing. I have got to move on. This shows the power of brand, though. So I tried ChatGTP first because, it was the first to market, and I just love it. Everybody says, oh, you need to try X, Y, and Z, Perplexity. And I'm like, Copilot. I'm like, no, I like it. I like it.
I agree, actually. I
like it.
Entrenched.
So yeah, it's really really impacted my personal life and at work. I think, somebody kind of said, and I completely agree, I don't think AI is going to replace marketing, but marketeers that use AI well will replace marketeers that don't. And the one thing I'm using, it can make us more effective, it can make it more efficient. But the key thing I'm finding with AI, it's a little bit like kind of writing a good brief. If you put shit in, you get shit out. And it's the same with AI. So it's the prompt engineering, I think, is really kind of important to get right and not take the first answer. If I'm working with Copilot or ChatGTP, normally to kind of solve a challenge I'm working on at work, it takes me a good hour. It will be like us sat in a room brainstorming together. Because I like that. I don't like that. That I don't agree with that. That's not my perspective. Can you get me some data to support this?
Yes.
And slowly but surely together. So I kind of have always joked that maybe co-pilot is kind of the wrong word. It's more like co-worker. For me, it's like, especially now we work a lot remotely, it's like having a colleague in the room for me to,
it's true.
Bounce ideas off of and things like that.
And the latest version is meant to be up to PhD level or master. Was it master's level or PhD level now, the GPT-5?
155 IQ. Einstein was 160.
Wow.
Yeah.
1% hallucinations before it was 4 to 6 or something. So it's coming. And so, I don't know, this is now getting slightly existential. Warning.
I'll go with you.
Warning
I'll go
alert.
with you. I'll go with it.
So the advent of superintelligence, there is one AI that's more intelligent than all humans put together, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, however long it is. What does that mean for, maybe how do you feel about that, but also what does that mean for education per se? Is it just an extension of where we are now, no big deal, or is it existential?
Yeah, well, so I think any AI, whether it's where we are today or it's where we're going tomorrow, if used kind of responsibly, can really help education. I think, there are already kind of studies exist by the World Economic Forum which has showed AI can assist learning by 4 times if used well. And I think anything that allows students or any learner to have personalized learning paths for them. It's almost like their own personal sat-nav, I like to think about it, because we're all different and we all learn in different styles. And AI allows this to happen because it can understand who you are and where you are now. You can tell it where you want to go and your preferred style, and it can give you a program. it can then intervene. So if you take the wrong left turn, just like sat-nav, AI can say, oh, hang on a second. So it can do those micro interventions, and then it can help take you to a place where you're ready, to do maybe an official or formal assessment. Nice. And I think, goodness, if we can arm every child with that, why wouldn't everybody be able to realise the life that they imagine? Because at the moment, with classes of 30, it's just impossible. Even the best teacher, they're not superhuman. So I think it can really augment teachers and allow teachers to fulfill their dreams and what they wanted to do in the profession. So I really don't think that we should be scared of it. I think we should be embracing it. But we do need to be careful, and that's why it's really important that, again, what you put in, because at the moment, if AI is searching like kind of everything out there, not everything out there is true. Not everything out there is fact. And there's some quite scary opinions out there, let's face it. And so what we have to make sure we do is we don't let that creep into the learning model. So it is about kind of responsibly kind of learning these large learning models, which are responsible and have some form of protection around them.
I love when you talk about the role of the critical and enduring role of teachers. And
Absolutely.
I could not agree more.
They're not going anywhere.
I so hear you on that. And it's funny, you talk about you were in Istanbul and you wanted to get a quiz, and 2 seconds later you had it on ChatGPT. My son, who's like 6 years old now, literally bugs me. Because what I do is at dinner time sometimes I put on the quiz. And it's kind of like, give me football questions for 10-year-olds because I want to kind of make it a bit more challenging for him. And now it's like
Was he 4?
Huh?
I'm joking. Pushy dad.
Yeah, well, exactly. Come on. And the point is, now every day he comes to me and says, Dad, can I do a quiz on ChatGPT? And it's all natural language, and he speaks to it just in the same way.
Yeah, amazing.
And then he kind of goes, well, wait, Dad, you can do it. Well, why can't I do it?
Yeah.
And you can just see how it all evolves. It's quite amazing. But I want to come back to maybe one of the critical levers in education, and you use the term assessment. Because clearly that is one of the big things, and actually the evolution of assessment has to take place and shape as a consequence. And I'd go back to my university days, and essays and dissertations all seems fairly old hat now.
I agree.
So what does this look like? What does that bit look like then?
Well, look, I'm a massive fan of progressive assessments. I completely agree. Today is result day.
Yes.
I still have nightmares about going into the exam hall. Like, I've forgotten to study. I've had one, I don't know if you had it when your teeth are falling out. Apparently that's stress. Why do we put our children through this type of stress? I don't think there's need for it. And I think the way education is evolving in technology, there are ways to do it which is much more natural and allows people to shine without putting the stress of that moment on them. So this whole idea of progressive assessments where we assess you in the flow of your learning or in the flow of work is something I'm really excited about. Nice. Because I think that will allow every child to shine, not just those which have a skill of revising and performing on exam day. And it is a skill. It is a skill. I've known people who are very intelligent and very capable, but the stress of exams, that's it. They just can't get that grade. And that's really, really unfair. So this whole idea of assessing in the flow, I think, is wonderful.
Ooh, I love that phrase, assessing in the flow.
Assessing in the flow.
Yeah.
So you've spoken about personally how dyslexia was a hindrance to formal education. This conversation comes up time and time again. Many of the people we've had on the show, neurodiverse, what is neurotypical? Let's not go down there. But to what extent has it helped you? Are there some aspects of the way your brain is wired which you think have essentially underpinned your success?
I don't know. I find that's a really tricky one to answer because this has just always been me.
Yeah.
I don't know any different. So I wouldn't know how a non-dyslexic person would do it. It's just me, really.
So some people talk to, not to be too prescriptive about it because they're no two people are the same, but often people with dyslexia are more creative, instinctive, intuitive, etc. So do you think there's some things what's special about your brain? There must be.
I think
I'm inviting you to flatter yourself.
I'm trying to think about it a little bit. I suppose I've always lent more on my EQ than my IQ.
There you go. Yeah.
In terms of, I think what's made me a success today is my ability to kind of connect with people and understand people versus being an academic genius. Now, if that's driven by dyslexia or not, I have no idea. But I think that by far, I would say, is my strength.
Yeah.
What would you say your teams would say about you?
Oh, goodness. I always ask that question in an interview, actually. Now you're asking me. I'm like, oh,
the tables have turned.
What do they do? Well, do you know what, actually? I'm going to reference. So when I left Dyson, I was at Dyson for 12 years. It was like my home and my family in many ways. They gave me an amazing send-off. And one of the many very generous gifts they gave me was a word cloud. So they asked everybody to say a word that they would use to describe me. And it's, in a beautiful frame. So there's all these words. And then underneath it says a force to be reckoned with, Rachel. So that probably tells you something. But there's loads. There's really funny ones. Leopard print, I'm a massive fan of animal print. Diet Coke, I'm addicted. So they were all the fun ones. But by far the ones which kind of come out as kind of, passionate, energetic.
So true.
Curious. So I think it would be words in that vein. As I said, there were a lot of wonderful words in there and some really funny ones as well. But they were by far the biggest and the boldest as they were said a lot.
Lovely.
I can see it come true. Very cool.
So many insights coming out today and advice and tips for people thinking about their careers. What's the single best piece of career advice you've had that would be useful for other people to hear?
Just be Rachel, I think, is the biggest advice. There's something so powerful when you can find your own inner confidence and you have that self-belief. And that doesn't mean being arrogant. You can have that kind of confidence and inner self-belief and still be very humble with it. But yeah, the younger me spent far too much time worrying about what other people think. And I still do to some extent I'm going to be 47 next week. And it's like I would love for me to get to a place, I'm much, much better than I am. But for any younger person, I would say, I don't want it to sound wanky, like invest in yourself, but actually building and finding a way to have that inner kind of confidence. So actually, you don't let things get on top of you too much. You're never going to be liked or loved by everybody, but that's fine, especially at work, as long as you're respected and it's the right thing to do. And being able to get rid of some of that baggage, of that worry and that stress about, oh my God, what do they think? What are they saying? I think is probably the best advice I could give somebody and the best piece of advice I've had.
Just a quick follow-up on that. It sounds like that matured over time. So something shifted. Again, for people listening in, I guess there's no sort of shortcuts or whatever, but how to accelerate through that process to get to comfort with all of that?
Yeah, I think some of it is about time. Another piece of advice I was going to say is, if I could speak to the younger Rachel, is there's no rush. Like when I was young, I was in a rush. I wanted to be, just be as a brand manager. I want to be a senior brand manager. I want to be a marketing manager. And I want it all within the year. And I kind of think, oh my goodness, Rachel, or young Rachel, just take a chill pill. It will
I'm getting the force to be reckoned with thing. This divide.
Definitely.
It's coming there.
That was about 4 promotions in the year, by the way, as I heard that.
But yeah, it's just, come on, it's... so some of it does just take time. I think it does take time. The other thing is, just being very aware of it and being able to talk about it. There's so much ability now to get coaches or mentorships, whether it's something you personally fund or a lot of companies offer it. And I've just found it invaluable. I have a coach at the moment, and it's brilliant. It's really great to just be able to, just talk about some of the things that are worrying you and bothering you, and it's amazingly powerful. And some people still feel a bit squishy about that. And I would say don't embrace it, give it a go, because I found it really, really helpful.
Amazing. Rachel, I loved this conversation.
Yeah.
So much fun, so much high energy, so much great advice and insight. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, well, thank you again for having me. It's been great.
Amazing. Thank you, Rachel.